He was born where the wind screams across endless grass. But he died in a palace of stone. The man who continued the dream of Genghis Khan and created the greatest dynasty in Asian history. His name was Kublai Khan. The year 1215. Across the Mongolian grasslands, wind carries dust and blood. This is the year a child cries out for the first time, not in a palace, but among leather tents and horse hooves. He is the grandson of Genghis Khan, a boy born to carry both the glory and the fate of the nomadic people. His mother, Sorgatani Beki, a woman history calls the steel lotus of the desert. She doesn't just teach her son to ride horses and shoot arrows, she teaches him to see beyond the horizon of the grasslands. From childhood, he is different from other Mongol boys his age. Quiet, observant, often standing still, gazing south toward the Chinese dynasties hidden in distant clouds. One frozen winter day, at just 9 years old, Kublai and his brother ride out hunting. Wind cuts like blades, snow blinds the eyes. Yet he tracks an antelope for miles without losing focus. When his arrow pierces the animal, the adults are stunned. That evening, Genghis Khan, his legendary grandfather, appears in person. He takes the fat from the antelope, rubs it on Kublai's middle finger and says, "This is the finger of one who knows how to hunt and how to keep his word." A small ritual, but it is a sacred recognition. The blood of Genghis has chosen its heir. Summer 1227. Terrible news spreads across the grasslands. Genghis Khan has died during a campaign in western Xia. The entire desert falls silent. People are forbidden to cry aloud because the soul of the wolf never dies weak. In a small tent, Kublai, the 12-year-old grandson, quietly listens to old warriors tell stories of his grandfather, of conquests, of rivers stained with blood, and of his final words. One day the Mongols must learn to live as a people, not just as an army. The boy doesn't fully understand those words, but they lodge in his heart like an arrow in sand, silent but impossible to remove. After Genghis Khan's death, the throne passes to his son, Kublai Khan. Kublai's father, Tolui, becomes the pillar holding the empire together. The young boy grows up amid tribal gatherings reeking of fermented mare's milk, amid the roar of war victories and endless arguments about who is worthy to rule the world. From childhood, Kublai is different, quiet, observant, and has an iron memory. While other children ride horses and shoot arrows, he sneaks close to southern messengers to hear stories about China, about dynasties that govern with writing, not just with swords. People tell a story. Once, seeing a map of the Song dynasty, Kublai asked, "If they have no horses, how do they keep this land?" A Han official answered, "With the hearts of the people." From that day, the phrase, "hearts of the people," becomes an obsession in the mind of this nomadic boy. While others learned how to kill, he learned how to keep. Year 1232, an early cold on the grasslands. Bad news arrives again. Kublai Khan, the great Khan, falls gravely ill. The shamans say the empire has angered the spirits. Someone must sacrifice themselves to bear the karma for all. Tolui, Kublai's father, steps forward without hesitation. That night, under dim torchlight, Tolui drinks a cup of poison. The entire camp falls silent. Only the howling wind and the eyes of a 17-year-old son watching his father collapse without being able to speak a word. A father dies to preserve the throne for his brother. A son lives to understand the price of power. The Mongols call it the greatest sacrifice in the lineage of the Blue Wolf. But for Kublai, it is the first scar of his life. The next morning, as the body is buried according to ancient ritual, Kublai stands in silence for a very long time. In history, many emperors learned to rule from victory. But Kublai Khan learned it from the deaths of two fathers. One taught him how to open an empire, the other taught him the price of keeping it. After his father's death, something changes inside Kublai. While his brothers and generals indulge in wine, horses, and war glory, Kublai spends his nights reading. People see lamplight in his tent burning until dawn, not to sharpen swords, but to study Confucian texts in Chinese history books. For the first time in Mongol history, a prince holds a brush pen instead of a bow. Han scholars recall, this prince learned to read so fast, one winter he finished the foundational texts. But the Mongols mock him. What kind of noble only knows how to bow before paper? But Kublai doesn't care. He knows one day those who laugh will have to kneel, not before strength, but before wisdom. He invites Confucian scholars, Taoist priests, Tibetan lamas to his camp. By day he rides horses and shoots arrows with soldiers. By night he debates with wise men. A life in two worlds, between barbarian and emperor. One scholar once asked, "With what will you conquer China? With horses?" Kublai smiled. "With horses, I can take land. But to keep land, I must ride the hearts of people." From then, he begins experiments, learning how to manage food supplies and taxes, observing the Chinese bureaucratic system, how they run an entire empire with red seals, recording meticulously about customs, beliefs, writing systems, and laws. This is no longer curiosity. This is a long-term strategy. Kublai isn't just learning how to govern. He's learning how to transform an entire civilization to make it serve him. By age 25, when given authority to govern the Eastern territories, he is ready. No one in the Mongol camp understands that. For 8 years, Kublai hasn't been in hiding. He has been testing his own model of governance. He begins reducing taxes, allowing people to return to farming, and promoting Han scholars. This is a decision so bold that the entire Mongol court considers it treason. But the result is the opposite. The land under Kublai becomes prosperous, stable, and loyal. From the child who once cried at his father's grave, to a young man who transforms loss into soft power, Kublai has passed through the quietest but most decisive period of his life. Because in that silence, he doesn't learn how to kill people, but how to make them willingly live under his banner. Summer 1259. Shocking news arrives from the south. Genghis Khan, Kublai's brother, dies while besieging a fortress. The empire wakes in chaos. There is no clear succession decree. Only a vast grassland, and two men who both believe they deserve the throne. In the north, at Karakoram, the ancient capital in the desert, Arik-Bok, the youngest brother, gathers traditional warriors. He is supported by those who still believe in the original Mongol soul. War horses, bows and arrows, and the law of the grasslands. In the south, amid the conquered lands of northern China, Kublai Khan stands among Han scholars, brick fortresses, and a different dream. If the Mongols only know how to ride horses forever, one day the horses will tire and the empire will collapse. This is not an ordinary fight for the throne. This is a confrontation between two futures. One side is glorious past, the other is unprecedented future. It is May 1260. Kublai doesn't wait. While Arik-Bok is still organizing a Kurultai, assembly of nobles, according to the tradition, Kublai crowns himself at Kaiping, witnessed by Han officials and southern generals. That action, hasty, bold, and violating tradition, shocks the entire grassland. People say he is not a great Khan chosen by the grasslands. He is an emperor self-proclaimed by Chinese land. But Kublai knows something Arik-Bok doesn't. Modern war is not won by fast horses, but by full granaries and open supply lines. The civil war war erupts. Not through magnificent battles on the grasslands, but through a game of slow encirclement. Arik Boke has large armies, has the loyalty of tribes. But Kublai has wheat from northern China, salt from Shaanxi, and iron from Chinese forges. Months pass. Arik Boke's troops starve, not from losing battles, but because supply lines are cut by those who know how to use maps, not just ride horses. One scholar wrote, Kublai Khan didn't defeat his brother with swords, but with numbers and ledgers. Year 1264. Arik Boke surrenders, not on the battlefield but in a negotiation tent, when realizing that his army cannot fight with empty stomachs and wavering hearts. Kublai accepts the surrender, but doesn't kill his brother. He grants Arik Boke freedom to return to Karakoram, where the younger brother will die in loneliness 2 years later, not by execution, but by being forgotten by history. In Kublai's heart, perhaps he still remembers the boy who once rode horses with his brother under the grassland sky. But now he is no longer that boy. He is the great Khan, and a great Khan cannot afford to be soft with the past. After settling internal conflicts, Kublai turns his eyes south, where the Song dynasty still stands firm as a final wall. This is not a weak kingdom. The southern Song is the most refined civilization in the 13th century Asia. The capital Hangzhou is richer than any city in the world. Poetry, painting, silk, all at their peak. But it is also an empire tired, divided, and lacking the will to fight. Kublai is not hasty. He knows conquering a civilization is not like defeating a tribe. It takes time, requires strategy, and most importantly, knowing when to use the sword, when to use words. Year 1268, he begins besieging Xiangyang and Fancheng, two key fortresses of the southern Song on the Han River.
Fire!
These are not lightning strikes like the time of Genghis Khan. This is a siege lasting 5 years, patient, cruel, and merciless. The Mongols learn how to build ships. The Mongols learn how to construct siege weapons. The Mongols, steppe cavalry who once feared water, now become a navy on the Yangtze River. The empire no longer rides horses. The empire is learning to swim. Year 1276. Hangzhou falls, not from fighting, but because Empress Dowager Ji decides to surrender to save her people. Kublai doesn't massacre. He welcomes the young Song emperor to the capital, provides education, and treats him with ceremony. This is a message. I am not a barbarian. I am your emperor. But the war isn't over. Song remnants flee south carrying 2 young princes, holding out at sea with fragile hope that they can run forever. They don't know. Kublai Khan never leaves a story unfinished. March 19th, 1279. The Battle of Yamen, waters off the coast of Guangdong. Over 1,000 Song warships face the Yuan fleet. This is the largest naval battle of the 13th century, a battle that history will call the day the last door of ancient China closed. Song general Zhang Shiji fights bravely, but Yuan forces have what Song lacks: discipline, artillery, and an uncompromising strategy. When the last warship sinks, when the young emperor is carried and jumps into the sea, with a loyal official, a 319-year dynasty sinks with the waves. News of victory reaches Dadu. Kublai sits on the throne, silent for a long time. No celebration, no cheering. Only a 64-year-old man looking out the window toward distant seas where a civilization has just ended. A court historian recorded, "His Majesty did not smile on the day of victory." Perhaps Kublai understands that. Conquest is easy, but keeping what is conquered, that is the real battle. Year 1275. While the empire is busy with war, a group of strangers from the west, 3 Venetians with dust-covered clothes, walk into the palace of Xanadu, where Kublai holds court each summer. They are Niccolo Polo, Maffeo Polo, and their 21-year-old son, Marco. Kublai sits on the throne looking at them, not surprised, not afraid, only curious. Where do these people come from? And why do they dare travel nearly 10,000 kilometers just to meet me? Marco Polo later wrote, "When I first saw the great Khan, I thought I was seeing the sun. Not because he shone brightly, but because everything revolved around him." Kublai asks questions. Marco answers. He asks about Venice, about Europe, about distant kings and strange religions. Marco answers each question, not flattering, not fearful, just a young man with curious eyes and good memory. Kublai likes that, because in court, too many people say what he wants to hear. But Marco Polo says what he has never heard. From then, Marco Polo stays, not as a prisoner, but as a messenger, an official, and sometimes as the great Khan's eyes. Kublai sends Marco across the empire, into Yunnan, down to Sichuan, through Hangzhou, recording everything. Population, taxes, customs, religions. Marco Polo is not just a traveler. He is a living intelligence tool for an emperor who wants to understand every corner of his land. And Kublai, who was once criticized as too Sinicized, now uses a Westerner to understand the East. This is his genius. Never trust a single source. Always look from multiple angles, even through the eyes of outsiders. People ask, why does Kublai trust a stranger so much? The answer lies in his governing philosophy. I don't need blind loyalty. I need intelligence. Whether they come from the grasslands, from China, or from the farthest edge of this world. Kublai's court is where all civilizations converge. Confucian scholars sit next to Tibetan lamas. Persian merchants discuss with Korean envoys. Persian musicians play beside Han singers. This is no longer a Mongol court. This is the capital of the world, where boundaries between civilizations dissolve. Marco Polo stays for 17 years. When he returns to Venice, he brings a book, The Travels of Marco Polo, or as later generations call it, The Description of the World. Europe reads and is stunned. They don't believe such an empire exists. So wealthy it uses paper as money. So vast it takes 3 years to travel from one end to the other. So civilized it has postal systems, roads, and a complete legal framework. Many call Marco Polo a liar, but history proves he didn't lie. He simply saw a world that the West had never imagined. And at the center of that world sits a man born on horseback, but now rules from a throne of stone. From a boy of the grasslands to a young man learning to read, to the great Khan who unified China, to the emperor who opened doors to the world, Kublai Khan walked a journey that no one in his lineage had ever walked. He conquered not just with swords, but with vision. He ruled not just with power, but with wisdom from multiple worlds. He understood that the future belongs not to those who destroy, but to those who know how to rebuild. Born where the wind screams, died where stone stands eternal. This is Kublai Khan, the man who learned to ride, not just horses, but the hearts of millions.